Technology is a useful servant, but a dangerous master. Christian Lang.
Chairman Gensler's been in not quite a year in his position. So it took him a while, of course, to fill some of the spots. As far as the senior spots at the SEC. So I think we've yet to see what's going to go on, but I think all indications are they're going to be aggressive on the enforcement side. They could spread their forces too thinly, and if people push back in court, the SEC may find itself, like it has in the past, not being successful before an Article III judge who may not be impressed by their arguments. So we'll see. I mean, one case that actually started under Jay Clayton is on his penultimate day in office is the lawsuit against Ripple regarding XRP and whether or not that is a security. We should get a ruling in that trial here sometime here in the next couple months, maybe. So that may be an indication of where things are going to go. And perhaps the SEC is waiting to see how it might fare in court on that. But a lot of these arguments, especially if they take aim at trading platforms, are going to get back to the essential question of what is a security and what's not. Because again, the SEC does not have jurisdiction over a trading platform if it's not trading a security. So, we come back to that essential question.
Paul Atkins was appointed by President George Bush to be Commissioner of the Securities and Exchange Commission on July 29, 2002. Paul says we will hear more in the next 2 months regarding the Ripple case. Now, Ripple has deep pockets and requires the most attention and resources from the SEC. Paul says if the SEC is spread too thin, they can lose many cases. Will the SEC settle so they can focus on other cases that they can win? Will they cut their losses?
From basic investor protections that came out of the Great Depression. So I think we need to bring this whole world into that. Mm-hmm. Modify some of the rules underneath the hood, change some of the specifics, but the time for this ecosystem, these crypto markets, to live outside of social policy norms, I think we have to get beyond that.
Yeah. Sitting next to Gensler is Nahi Narula. She is director of the MIT Digital Currency Initiative, the Fed working with MIT to study CBDCs. She has recently spoken congressional hearings and her opinion matters. Nahi and Gensler were also sitting next to each other during a digital currency war simulation. Today's Gensler has a stance that nothing should be changed, and in this earlier clip, he says that we have to get under the hood and change some of the specifics.
And what the regulators and governments can enforce, and then there's what people want. So technology is kind of inevitable. It's really hard to stop a snowball rolling down a mountain. And so we've seen this in plenty of areas in tech, and where tech is run up against regulation and government. And if people are really using something and finding value in it, then the regulation has to change. You can't change people finding value in something. So an example of this is Uber. Uber pretty flagrantly flouted regulations to start their company and to start their business. And, as people kind of tried to put a lid on that, they were really challenged. They were challenged politically. Yeah. Uber took out advertisements saying, your politicians are trying to take this service away from you, and people didn't like it. Yeah. And so, you can think about that analogy extending to money. Right. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And I think it really depends on where we see useful systems being built, useful applications that really make people's lives better.
Uber changed the rules because it's what the people wanted. Uber challenged the politicians politically by taking out ads. Uber is still here. Think about the backlash that the SEC has undergone since the lawsuit. My understanding is Deaton's connect to Congress has been doing very well. It took me 1 minute to write my state officials using his website. Link is pinned in the comments below. A snowball turning into an avalanche sounds like the bear.
And things like the Ripple case, really have a huge effect on them. They recognize that they can potentially get major pushback.
Very few people in this world like creating waves that can jeopardize their livelihoods. the vast majority of people like the path of least resistance.
You still were inside the framework. So I think that there are a lot of lessons from when the internet was first being adopted.
Well, it's no fun talking about where we agree. But anyway, go ahead.
Sure. You want to get to where we disagree?
Yeah, but first,
do you want to talk about maybe about Ripple or Ether?
No.
You want to talk about where we disagree, Ripple or Ethereum? He already knows most people disagree with him. Is he willing to jeopardize his career for a disagreement? Also, Neha thinking XRP is not a security is powerful in itself. Crypto IRA iTrustCapital raises $125 million and pushes its valuation over $1 billion. iTrust has completed a $125 million Series A growth equity investment led by New York-based venture capitalist firm Left Lane Capital. iTrust serves clients that seek long-term tax-advantaged exposure to crypto as an asset class, providing over 25 different cryptos in addition to physical gold and silver. iTrust allows U.S.-based investors to incorporate crypto investments into their retirement portfolios. The company reported it reached over $4.5 billion in total transaction volume. In June 2021, ProPublica reported PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel had used a Roth IRA to invest $2,000 more than 20 years ago and turn it into a $5 billion fund. Offering tax-advantaged access to crypto through IRAs, iTrust seems to be aiming for a similar way to reduce potential tax payments using crypto investments. So recently, iTrustCapital has announced that they're supporting Avalanche, so you'll be able to start buying and selling AVAX in your crypto IRA immediately. If you use my link, itrustcapital.com/Darren, you can get up to $100 funding rewards. So be sure to check out iTrustCapital and be sure to research IRAs.
Because the last 5 years have been so surprising. Right. Everything is just accelerated so much faster than I ever thought it would. So 2026, I think that gives some central banks enough time, some major central banks enough time to launch their own currency. So I think we see a top 6
including
currency.
The dollar? The US?
I don't know if it'll be the dollar, but I think we'll see at least one top 6
We're not going to hold you to this,
at least one of them has launched a digital currency. I think that the cryptocurrency space is going to be bigger than ever.
Yeah.
And just like with we've seen these use cases come up that were a little bit surprising but really exciting and took the world by a storm. DeFi, NFTs, we're going to see even more of those. So we're going to see new business models built on top of these cryptocurrency platforms. I also think we might see a much smaller number of cryptocurrencies. I think the space is gonna winnow a little bit, whether that's due to regulation or hacks or whatever might happen.
So the person that's heading up the MIT Digital Currency Research Institution is thinking that the crypto space is going to be as big as ever but condensed due to regulations or a hack. She has a rapport with Gensler and other regulators. She would know. Major G7 currencies will have a CBDC by 2026.
So the old system just isn't cutting it anymore. And unfortunately, the trajectory of that is that it's just going to keep on getting worse and worse and worse. And so, yes, we see China with the yuan, but the competitiveness of the US dollar is a matter of national security, and we have to take this seriously and continue to innovate.
The old system is just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse, and this is a matter of national security.
Another way of thinking about crypto is an asset with very different risk properties than most other assets. There's increasingly being held as a diversification element in portfolios. And if crypto came to be a third the size in portfolios that gold is, it would triple or quadruple in value. And so, given the extent to which we've seen widespread adoption, when crypto comes into the mainstream, where it still isn't for a large number of investors, its combined value could be much greater than it is now. And I think the price of crypto at any moment reflects a tug of war between those two considerations. And they're both sufficiently abstract that it's very hard to know which way that tug of war will move.
Lawrence Summers thinks if crypto takes a third of investors' gold allocation, it would 3x to 4x its current value. The crypto markets are tiny. Regulations are coming to allow the big guys to enter. When they do, the tide is going to rise substantially for everyone. Recently, the president signed an executive order on crypto.
Indeed, a parallel financial system is emerging. Certainly, what we want to do is to build on top of the infrastructure we have, not only the central banking infrastructure, but also the banking system infrastructure. Now, I think probably the main issue that we should try to capture is the tremendous efficiency gains that would be generated by starting with a clean page, you know. I mean, I think that today, for example, in cross-border payments, in correspondent banking, and in other aspects, something that is tremendously difficult for the banking system and authorities is to overcome legacy issues. It's very difficult to implement a complete new and efficient technology on top of the legacy systems. Now, one of the things that CBDC can do, and that's what we are exploring, and I can say that we have made a tremendous progress here, is that it opens huge technology potential. As a matter of fact, very similar to what is being created out there by fintechs and innovators. But this would be ordered, this will be structured, and this would be based on solid foundations. So I think that the promise of a clean slate should be a tremendous incentive, because banking institutions and other payment service providers, financial providers, want to jump into innovation, but one of the competitive disadvantages they have is that they have to deal with their legacy. So this is a way to sort of leapfrog that legacy.
The efficiency that this technology offers has the potential to boost the country's GDP just by making transactions cheap and efficient. The plan is for the banks to absorb this innovation and mold it to follow the banking regulations. The crypto projects that can follow those regulations will be the ones that benefit in the long run.
We have been leapfrogged by others, by digital currency, by digital Chinese currency. Why? Because frankly, our central bank has been slow, and there's an appointment coming in January of 22. The president's got to decide whether to change over who's leading the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve runs our payment system. And I think we need to move that Federal Reserve into the modern era.
The private sector is responsible for innovation. To catch up with China, the government, the Fed, is going to have to lean on the private sector to innovate.
More fundamentally, decentralization has a cost. Trust in an anonymous system is maintained by self-interested validators who ensure the integrity of the ledger in the absence of a central authority. So the system must generate enough fees or rents to provide these validators with the right incentive. These rents accumulate mostly to insiders, such as Bitcoin miners or those who hold more governance tokens. These rents are also a reason why DeFi platforms have been so attractive for venture capital investment. Many protocols entrench insiders since those with more coins have more power. Ultimately, this means high costs for users. So while insiders often make spectacular returns, efficiency gains for average users have so far failed to materialize. And in the absence of regulation, fraud, hacks, and so-called rug pulls have become rampant. In addition, this structure makes it hard for fully decentralized systems to scale up. Achieving agreement in a large network takes time and effort and consumes energy. The larger the ledger, the harder it becomes to update it quickly. This is why many DLT systems can only handle a small volume of transactions to date and often suffer from network congestion. This is the reason why Bitcoin requires so much electricity. Indeed, the necessity of rents to maintain incentives in a blockchain is a feature, not a bug. It is a case of the more the sorrier instead of the more the merrier. And the proliferation of blockchains means that many are competing to be a single arbiter of truth.
Isn't it interesting that Augustine is making the same points that David Schwartz has made? No incentive is the best incentive. The XRP ledger does not reward truth, and anyone can participate in the decentralization of the XRPL by hosting a node or a validator at a minor cost. With nations developing their CBDC on private and public versions of the XRPL, I think the XRPL is custom tailored for exactly what the banks are looking for. And as more countries test the XRPL for CBDCs, the more traction we will see simply because the tech is superior for this use case.
Well, the obvious one is features like CBDCs. Ripple's CBDC solution enables central banks to create a private parallel network, a permissioned blockchain that you can issue a CBDC on, and then you can connect that to the main public XRP ledger. Our vision is to solve for interoperability between CBDCs while creating a virtual lab for central banks to experiment with new features. The transactions are verified by the same consensus protocol used by the XRP ledger, which is less energy intensive, cheaper, and over 120,000 times more efficient than things like proof of work. Major first step in providing central banks with a secure, controlled, and flexible solution. Imagine every major institution in the world able to settle every major fiat asset with every other institution in a compatible jurisdiction in seconds for less than a penny. And I'll say that again in case you missed it. Imagine every major institution in the world able to settle every major fiat asset with every other institution in a compatible jurisdiction in seconds for less than a penny.
With federated sidechains, advanced economies can create complex CBDC systems, while developing nations that do not have a budget for complex tech can simply back a gateway on the XRPL for negligible costs. The theoretical unrestricted right to develop power to wage war against other states is antisocial and is doubly dangerous because the state as a mass entity represents a low moral and intellectual level. Christian Lang. Thanks everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please remember to like and subscribe and comment below. If you wish to support my channel, I have a Patreon. Thanks everyone.